Okay, so get ready, because today we're diving into the world of gangs.
Ooh.
But not the way you might think.
Okay.
We're not talking statistics or anything like that.
Right.
We're going straight to the source.
Okay.
A former gang member named Darren.
Okay.
And he's got some seriously eye-opening observations about how these groups actually work.
Yeah.
And here's the twist.
Yeah.
He's talking about fashion.
Really?
Yeah, fashion.
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought about it.
Like, who knew that what someone wears could tell you so much about gangs?
I mean, you don't usually connect those two things. You
do.
think gangs, you think, crime, violence.
Right, exactly.
Not necessarily what they're wearing.
So we found this interview with Darren. It's on the Scouse Sit-Off channel. And he talks about how these young gang members,
Yeah.
it's like they have a uniform,
Yeah.
tracksuits, hoods up,
Yeah.
masks on,
Thoroughly.
the works,
Wow.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
He's talking about scorching hot weather,
Oh, wow.
like sweltering heat,
That's crazy.
and they're still dressed like this.
I mean, that's gotta be uncomfortable.
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But I guess that just goes to show you
Yeah.
how important that sense of belonging is,
It's gotta be.
especially in these tough environments.
Yeah, where these gangs pop up.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
you almost have to laugh,
Yeah.
right?
It's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Like, you'd think at some point comfort would win out,
Totally.
but it doesn't, does it?
It doesn't.
So it really shows you how powerful that pull of identity is.
It does.
They're willing to suffer for it.
Yeah.
That's wild.
But it gets even more interesting because G points out this ironic twist.
Okay, what's that?
He says by trying so hard to fit in, these kids, they actually end up losing themselves.
Really?
Yeah, like their individuality gets lost somewhere along the way.
That's a trip.
Right.
So it's like a paradox.
It really is.
You try to fit in, you lose yourself.
Exactly.
That's deep.
And he's talking about kids, right?
Yeah.
Teenagers, mostly.
Yeah, that age where you're trying to figure out who you are
What's that?
and that need to belong is just so strong,
Huge.
especially in those years.
Yeah,
And gangs, they know how to exploit that.
they do.
They prey on that vulnerability.
That need for acceptance,
Yeah.
and they twist it.
To get what they want.
They sure do.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the clothes or trying to look tough,
Yeah.
She talks about how this whole group mentality, it kind of seeps into everything they do.
Interesting.
Like even how they act, how they move.
Okay.
He talks about this competitive vibe he noticed between them,
Mm.
especially when they were rapping or just messing around, posturing,
Yeah.
almost like they're putting on a show.
Uh-huh.
And get this, he even talks about how they find amusement in things that are actually pretty dangerous.
Wow. So it's like the danger becomes normalized.
Exactly. It's like they're desensitized to it.
Right. It's just part of life, part of the routine.
And maybe even a source of entertainment,
Yeah, like a competition almost.
which is kind of messed up when you think about it.
It is really concerning.
Because it's like the line between right and wrong starts to get blurry,
Yeah, totally.
When you're surrounded by that all the time and everyone's laughing along.
It becomes the norm.
Exactly. Those negative things, they just become normal.
And that's how it sucks you in, right?
That's exactly it. It's insidious,
It really is, because the more you accept it, the less shocking it becomes.
And then it's easier to do yourself.
Or to ignore it when others do it,
Exactly.
which is a scary thought.
It is. And G doesn't shy away from that at all.
Okay.
He's really honest about it. He says a lot of these kids are drawn in by this idea that there's strength in numbers.
Right. Like the more people they have,
The safer they are.
the more powerful they are.
Exactly. Even if it's not really true.
It's an illusion of safety, of power.
Exactly. And G makes a really important distinction. He says there's a difference between the hardcore members and the followers.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like the ones who are really in it deep, calling the shot.
Right. They're committed.
And then there's the ones who are just looking for protection, maybe a place to belong.
Or just to avoid being targeted themselves.
Exactly. So it's not always about being a criminal. Sometimes it's just about survival,
That's a really important point.
trying to stay safe in a dangerous environment.
And that's where that illusion of strength in numbers can be really dangerous,
Yeah.
because it might feel safe for a little while.
Right.
But when things go wrong, which they often do in that world, it's the followers who are most at risk.
The ones on the edges.
The ones who aren't really in control.
It's tough. You know?
It is. And it's a side of things we don't always hear about. We
Right.
hear about the gangs, the violence.
The headlines.
Yeah, but we don't always think about the individuals caught up in it.
And their motivations.
Exactly. And what's so powerful about hearing someone like Darren talk,
Yeah,
it makes you realize there's a human side to all of this.
definitely.
These aren't just statistics, you know?
Right.
These are real people with real stories, real reasons for ending up where they did.
And sometimes those reasons are more complicated than we want to believe.
Absolutely. It's not always about being a hardened criminal. Sometimes it's just about trying to survive,
Exactly.
trying to find your place in a world that feels stacked against you.
And that's where I think this deep dive takes on a whole other level, you know?
Yeah.
Because we're not just here to talk about gangs as this abstract problem.
Right.
We're trying to understand the why.
The human element.
Exactly. And for me, that's what makes Darren Key's perspective so valuable.
Yeah.
He's not just pointing fingers, he's offering a glimpse inside.
He's been there.
Yeah. He gets it in a way that most of us never will.
And that's why his insights are so crucial, you know?
So, as we wrap up here, what's the takeaway? What do we do with all of this?
That's the million-dollar question, right? But I think if we want to make a real difference, we have to start by understanding
Understanding what?
the needs that gangs are exploiting.
Okay, so like the need for belonging, for
Yeah,
purpose.
exactly. These young people, they're not inherently bad. They're just looking for something.
A place to fit in.
Yeah, a
Well-
sense of community.
Which, unfortunately, they often find in the worst places.
And that's where we, as a society, have to step up, you know?
What do you mean?
We have to offer them alternatives, real opportunities to find that sense of belonging in positive ways.
So it's about more than just telling them to stay away from gangs.
Exactly. It's about giving them somewhere else to go, something else to strive for.
Mentorship, community programs, things like that.
Exactly. We need to show them that there are other paths, other ways to channel their energy and their talents.
Because at the end of the day, these young people, they have so much potential.
They really do.
And it's up to all of us to help them find a way to fulfill it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So there you have it, folks. We've gone deep into the world of gangs, but more importantly, we've gone deep into the human stories at the heart of it all. And maybe, just maybe, by understanding those stories, we can start to create a world where those paths, those choices, they lead to something better.